Should I talk to you? Okay, I'm Michael Dang. We're here at the Milk Block. My mom is Kathia Dang. She's the owner and developer of the entire block. So I'm here as her stand-in today. My mom started this project in 2018, and here we are, approaching 2026. So it'll have been almost an 8-year odyssey for her. For a while, it was hard to get the local community on board. And then I think as construction went about, maybe that didn't make things easier. Construction's hard on everybody, it's loud. And then I think once we started to bring the fences down, because construction was getting closer and closer, people were like, oh wow, look at that, like the Milk Block, right? There's a new building there, there's a new project. This little section, the pavers that Benny is on, we call Art Plaza. So it is very much supposed to be an art installation. And I think it's served that purpose ever since it arrived, because a lot of people stop and stare or take photos. And the day of the block party, we had it completely open, the flowers, lights were on. It was like a nice photo op for a lot of people, I think. Kind of endearing, where it's like, hey, Benny the milk truck is the Milk Block's mascot. It sort of just makes sense. Buildings are just something that she and I both happen to be attracted to and are drawn to, architecture in general. She especially has always been drawn to historic things, historic buildings, and has wondered how many people have come and gone through the space. Something that's special about this project specifically is that there is a market going in there, the food co-op, and we live in a co-op desert, so it's significant for a number of reasons, but it's been a market through most of the building's history since the 1940s. It was the OP Skaggs market for a long time, and then another market, then it was the Southeast Asian market, and now it'll be the Wasatch Food Co-op. So we thought that there was something sort of wholesome and full circle about that, where it's like the bones of the building still remain, and so does this sort of aura of what it was always meant to be, which maybe sounds a little cheesy now that it's coming together. But since Benny's been here, I've talked to a number of people, and I've said, I think I've had the realization that Benny is similar to the Milk Block project, and that it's very much like a restoration. It's like sort of revitalizing something, bringing it back to life that has stood the test of time, Very similarly to watching all of the little components of this come together. And I think knowing, it ties back into the public reaction, when the fences come down and people see it, it's like, wow, look, it happened. Again, you snap some fingers and it came together. But when you're here every day, if you're the Connors of the world and you're getting your hands dirty and you're just staring at this thing all the time, how much work goes into every little component, even if they're just really minor, at the end of the day. Once it's all done, it's such a small component relative to the finished product. But if it's not there, it doesn't work, right? Or it wouldn't have come together properly. I think because of our specific industry, I have a profound appreciation for process and what's behind the walls that you just would never see, all of the wires, all of the pipes, all that stuff. And I can tell that there's a lot of that at Benny. And I think it helps when you get to see things happen through the course of time. Benny was at your guys' shop for a good handful of months, So that was a lot of coming back, and it was like, wow, even just, when Connor started with the one pop-out window / door or whatever, before even starting on the other side, it was just every little component is worth celebrating. I think it's exciting. We got to visit semi-regularly, which was always fun. Part of what I like about this job, because I'm new to it, I was off to school for a while, and then when I really attached myself and immersed myself in the Milk Block project, construction was already a few months along. Part of what I like is all of these sort of, I guess you'd say, random places that you wouldn't normally frequent unless for very specific reasons. And construction requires visiting very specific warehouses and places, lumber yards, tile places, countertop, just totally random, where it's and they're huge warehouses full of this stuff. And you're like, I can't even believe there's this whole world that exists that operates like this as, routinely. And I felt similarly in going to Reparadise's shop. I was like, whoa, look at all these cool Sprinter vans, old cars, these things that they're working on. And it's this is just daily routine for them. So that part alone, I was just fascinated. I was enthralled. And then watching them work on Benny was awesome. And Connor, right, was just the man the whole time. And I got the sense that they kind of were enjoying working on Benny because it's a unique and specific truck, And I think our needs were kind of specific too. We loved visiting, and every time we did, there was something new to look at. the milk block itself sort of came about as this community-oriented project that was largely inspired by Harvey Milk, partly because of our location. I mean, we are on Harvey Milk Boulevard. And my mom has this story of, she's an insomniac by nature, so she hardly gets any sleep. Stays up a lot of nights, late nights, sort of just researching whatever random stuff comes to mind. One night she, I think, was doing some research about Harvey Milk specifically, came across an old speech of his in the Castro district, and where he stood upon this stoop and he mentioned this like strong belief in building community one neighborhood at a time. And so our tagline of the milk block is building community one block at a time. So this used to be the Southeast Asian Market, the main building that's behind me. And we acquired it, I think, in either 2017 or 2018. And the Southeast Asian Market was our tenant for a handful of years. And then they decided to retire after having been here for, 20 years or something like that, a long time, which allowed us the opportunity of sort of figuring out what direction we wanted to go in with the project. And then this corner building is a brand new build. It was all just parking lot before. And it was like very intentional, very curated. We always knew that we wanted a bar at the block, and we have one that's opening this weekend, actually. We always wanted a flower shop, which is literally sharing a wall with the bar. So we got both things. We wanted what would be a cross of like an art installation, but also like a signifier that you're at the milk block, some sort of thing. And a lot of ideas came about, put like vendor pop-ups in there, packaged foods, clothing, knickknacks, stuff like that. Maybe small local businesses that either don't have a brick and mortar to sell their product out of currently, or just maybe they already do have a brick and mortar and they want to have some sort of presence at the milk block from one week to the next or during the holidays or whatever. So we thought like, okay, maybe sort of like a milk truck, ice cream truck, food truck sort of situation. Again, probably in one of her nights of being an insomniac, she started Googling milk trucks, like vintage milk trucks. But everything that we stumbled upon was like really old, needed so much work. And then in her research, stumbled upon the International Metro van, specifically from the like 50s and 60s range. And then we found this one from just a local guy in California, and it was in really good shape. It drove at one point, but any mechanic that's looked at the car is like, we have no idea how this ever drove. I can understand why people maybe don't go in this direction, because it's a long haul and it's not always the most cost-efficient way to go about things. There's a lot that we've learned from doing this project, especially one of this size. So I think if people could even just pick little components of the importance of focusing on local, I think is great, especially in an area like this. I think that's part of what draws people, is that it's very local forward. And so there's a uniqueness to it. You're not just going through the mall and it's like a bunch of department stores or places that you're already familiar with. Even if you go on like State Street, there's a bunch of nice new developments, but they're like for Chipotle and Starbucks and whatever else, So I grew up in Salt Lake. I'm from here, born and raised. I went to college elsewhere for a number of years, and then I just moved back last summer. So I'm sort of like newly a resident of Salt Lake again. And I think in those years that I was away and coming back, visiting periodically, it's like I could see the growth of Salt Lake, I guess just that way, like very periodically and happening, but at a gradual pace. And I think now that we're here, it's starting to feel like that pace is upticking a little, but it's such a specific and quirky town for a lot of reasons, as are a lot of places, but Salt Lake especially, I think. There were a lot of like personal reasons that I wanted to leave. I think because Salt Lake by nature is a smaller town compared to, the metro areas that we have around the country, you think like, oh, that's not cultured enough, it's not exciting enough, whatever. And so to plug in and be attached to a project like this that we're really proud of, that we think is cool, and if we weren't responsible for, I think we would still think is pretty cool, It's just nice to be attached to a project that, if we're lucky enough, other people around town can point to as like a pocket of Salt Lake or a component of Salt Lake that is cool and that they're proud of. It's new and it's still got a long ways to go, and probably still a ways to prove itself in a number of ways. But if it could be referred to in the way a lot of people refer to 9th and 9th or 15th and 15th or any other areas that people enjoy wandering around town, I think that'd be a win for us. And I think it's just nice to be, because we're certainly not the sole responsible party for our growing city and for the cool things that are happening around here. Like I mentioned Central 9th earlier, and there's such a good team of developers down there and such a good collective group of businesses that I think all feed off of each other. That was very like intentional in the way that they put that together too. So we're certainly not the only cool project around town, but we're really proud to be like a cool component of what is a increasingly cool place, you know? So I think that's what we're happiest about, so.